It is evening on a Sunday in July in New Jersey. Around 80,000 people are inside MetLife Stadium. The clock shows 90 minutes. The whistle blows. France have won the World Cup for the third time. Their first in 1998, their second in 2018, and now a third in 2026, on a continent that is not their own, in front of a crowd that did not come to watch them win. 3 stars on the jersey. Only Brazil has more. So what happens next? Picture Paris. It is past midnight. It does not matter. In bars across the French capital, glasses are being raised before the final whistle has finished echoing. On the Boulevard Saint-Germain, in Montmartre, in the banlieues on the edges of the city where most of the players in this squad grew up, the noise starts and does not stop. The Champs-Élysées fills within minutes. Hundreds of thousands of people pour onto the most famous avenue in Europe. Blue, white and red smoke bombs go off in every direction, turning the night air into a wall of colour. People climb bus stops, newspaper kiosks, anything with height. Every car that tries to pass is surrounded and stopped. The Arc de Triomphe, Napoleon's arch, disappears into a sea of bodies and flags. The Eiffel Tower lights up blue, white and red. It has done this twice before. In 1998, an estimated 1.5 million people gathered on this same avenue when France beat Brazil in the final on home soil. The scenes that night were described as the greatest public gathering in Paris since the liberation from Nazi occupation in 1944. Players' faces were projected 30 meters high onto the Arc de Triomphe itself. The whole city stopped. In 2018, it happened again. Over 300,000 people on the Champs-Élysées within an hour of the final whistle. Smoke in the air, flags everywhere, strangers holding each other. And then, as it always does in France, it gets complicated, because a French World Cup celebration is not like any other celebration on Earth. In 2018, before the night was over, bottles were being thrown at riot police near the Arc de Triomphe. A major store on the Champs-Élysées had its windows smashed and was looted. Cars were set on fire in the side streets. Water cannons were deployed. Tear gas drifted across the same avenue where hundreds of thousands of people had been dancing an hour earlier. Over 400 arrests were made that night in Paris alone. This is not an accident. It is not unique to France. It is the specific thing that happens when a city full of people who rarely share anything suddenly share one enormous moment, and the edges of that crowd are filled with people who have other reasons to be angry. France is one of the most politically divided societies in Europe. Every time the national team wins, it creates a window, brief, fragile, improbable, where a country that cannot agree on almost anything agrees on one thing. In 1998, the squad that won on home soil was nicknamed Black Blanc Boer, Black, White, Arab. Players of Algerian heritage, Caribbean heritage, West African heritage, all wearing the same blue jersey and singing the same anthem. When Zinedine Zidane, the son of Algerian immigrants who grew up in the tough suburbs of Marseille, scored twice in the final, the crowd on the Champs-Élysées chanted, "Zidane for president." That is what a World Cup does to France for approximately 12 hours. Then the morning comes, and everything France was arguing about before the trophy was lifted is still there, waiting. The window closes, the unity dissolves, and the politicians fight over who gets to claim the win as theirs. France has been here before. They know exactly how this works. They do it anyway. Then comes the money. FIFA transfers $50 million to the French Football Federation. Prize money flows to the clubs who release their players. And the clubs in this France squad are some of the wealthiest in the world. Real Madrid, Paris Saint-Germain, Arsenal, Bayern Munich. This money lands on top of structures that already generate billions. But the money the world actually sees is, again, the shirts. The France home jersey, dark blue. The deep navy of Les Bleus is one of the most recognized kits in sport. When France won in 2018, their online store went down within minutes of the final whistle. The demand was so intense, the servers could not handle it. When Argentina won in 2022, shirt resale prices jumped by over 600%. But this time there is something on the France shirt that has never been there before. 3 stars. One for 1998. One for 2018. One for now. The 3rd star above the badge that says, France belongs in the conversation with Brazil, with Germany, with the very elite of world football history. A 3-star France shirt would not just sell out. It would be reprinted. It would be reprinted again. It would be worn for decades. And then there is the captain, a 27-year-old who scored in a World Cup final at 19 years old, who is already the greatest scorer in the history of French football, who arrived at this tournament with 20 World Cup goals to his name, a figure nobody in history has matched, and who has now won the whole thing twice. At 27, he has his entire peak still ahead of him, the player who defined the 2018 final as a teenager in Russia, who captained this team through a tournament where they beat Senegal, Iraq, Norway, Sweden, Paraguay, Morocco, and whoever stands in front of them in the final, who scored 7 goals in this tournament alone. He did not need a 3rd World Cup to confirm his place in football history. He already had it. But the conversation that never quite goes away, the comparison with the Argentine who spent his entire career trying to win this trophy just once, now has a different shape. 2 World Cups. 27 years old. But France also knows something that no other country has learned quite as painfully. The cost of winning. France won in 1998 on home soil. In 2002, they were eliminated in the group stage as defending champions without scoring a single goal in 3 matches. The hangover was total. The squad that had been celebrated as a symbol of national unity was the same squad that fractured, underperformed, and went home before the knockout rounds even started. France won in 2018 in Russia. In 2022, they made it all the way to the final, played a 3-3 draw against Argentina after being 2 goals down with 10 minutes to go. One of the most extraordinary comebacks in World Cup final history, and then lost on penalties. When you are world champions, losing a final in those circumstances still feels like failure. Because it does. Because that is what winning does to your expectations permanently. A 3rd World Cup title would not protect France from this pattern. It would intensify it. Every tournament after July 19th would begin with the same quiet pressure. Not whether France can win, but why they have not won 3 in a row. That is the weight every world champion carries. France has now carried it twice. No country has ever said the weight was not worth it. And the Eiffel Tower will light up blue, white and red for the 3rd time. And the Champs-Élysées will fill again, the smoke bombs, the flags, the strangers holding each other, the riot police on the side streets, the shops closing their shutters, the politicians preparing their speeches, and somewhere in a suburb of Paris, in one of the places where this squad actually grew up, a child will watch the captain lift the trophy on television and think something very specific. Not that France could win a World Cup. They already know that. They will think, I could do that. That is what the 3rd star means. The game has not changed. France have 3 of them now. Subscribe if you enjoy football explained simply.